Hi, everybody. We're live. We're having some technical issues here inside of the chambers, but while we don't want to halt progress, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So halfway through, we might switch back to the other way, but I'm going to be right next to the screen, and we're going to share our screen, so you won't be able to see anything but the presentation anyways. Thanks for being here. Those that are at home are going to be watching this later on YouTube. All right. JP, are you on?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Great. If you have trouble hearing me, go ahead and let me know. If you want to start sharing your screen, this is JP. JP is from a company called Waterworth, who are our consultants on this project. And we've been working, you've heard him present once or twice already today. I want to take a moment also to recognize our IT department who's trying to get us this technical difficulty. Also take a moment to recognize in the audience is our utility billing supervisor, Ms. Venetia Henderson, who was back in the utility department after when she got her start many years ago. And I want to thank all of you that are here in person and all those of you that are watching from home. We're going to go ahead and get started with the presentation itself. JP, if you could go ahead and go through the slides, please.
Sounds good. All right.
So how did we get here, right? Or what is our motive tonight? Those of you that were able to join us the other night for the capital improvement meeting and heard about the other program we're doing through the mid-mod and all the other funds that we're trying to put to these improvements. In my short term here, going on 8 months here, main things we talked about has been capital improvements and what we want to do. The priorities that we shared in the same room included our parks, our streets, but primarily what it included was our water lines, right? The main thing folks wanted done, that and obviously our actual new police building. So those are the 4 main priorities we had, right? Based off of those, the number 1 priority that was across the board that everybody said amongst the consensus was fix our water lines, water lines, water lines. Mm-hmm. Amongst those water lines, the 3 main concerns that existed and arguably 4 would have been 1, water quality, right? No one wants to see the things that have happened in Jackson, Mississippi, or that have occurred in Flint, Michigan, or other places nationally. So that was our number 1 thing, address our quality. Number 2 has been, if at all possible, the leaks, address our water loss, and address any areas that may have had any safety concerns or safety zones that may not have enough water in case of a fire or whatever happened. And the third, that everybody wishes we had more of in the market, is water pressure. All right. We know we're very far removed from the pressure situation. Before we can enact what we need to do in the pressure situation, we have to fix 1 and 2. And that's what our primary drive has happened and is taken. And we're going to talk a little bit more about capital improvements in a second. The truth is for years we have been behind. We realized how far behind we were, and we did a full analysis of our entire utility department and everything where we are. And long story short, we're about 2.5 million behind where we need to be per year, right? So roughly a little bit less than half deficit. So what we did is we took that number, divided by 365, and it equates to $6,850 per day deficit, right? It costs us twice that to pretty much run our department. Rough numbers, but that's what it costs us per day to run water and sanitation. You know, all the departments for the entire city. That's what it pretty much ballpark numbers. Okay, I'm not going to bore you with the successful places and whatnot. So at 90 days, this deficit started. We started the clock on October 1st. October, November, December, while we decide, deliberate, and get this thing done, for those 90 days that we deliberate and do this full study that we're doing, complete and thorough study, we're going to be in a deficit of $616,500. Those are real numbers as to where we are. We took 2.5 divided by 365, that's the cost per day, multiply that number by 90 days, that's where we are. Sir.
Why is sanitation figured in that?
We're going to get to that. I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's only water.
Okay.
I'll get to sanitation. I apologize. That is only water.
Okay.
I'm going to touch on sanitation in a second because that's one of the plans that we were given. But thank you. Good point. Sanitation is another story. We're actually right now, since October 1st, we're losing 91 cents per home per day. Excuse me, per home per month. 91 cents. So whatever the math is on it. Okay. Not as bad, right? But still equivalent to what we need to fix. JP, next slide, please. So as this, can we minimize JP? But we have to do that, or does he have to do that?
The windows?
The little, this little thing, we have to do it on,
I'll change it.
just because I want you to be able to see the rest of the screen.
Don't touch my computer, let me know.
Yeah, that's what that was, right? Okay, thank you so much. All right, so here's what that means. Roughly right now, as it keeps going up, there's two colors on your screen. There's a lighter blue, sorry, I'm in your way. There's a lighter blue and a darker blue. The lighter blue is our operating costs, which as you can see, it stays pretty steady for the most part, right? It goes up a little bit slightly because eventually as growth occurs, you're gonna have more. What really goes up at a higher peak is your darker blue, which is your usage. Why? Because between 2022 and 2032, there will be more expenses. We're going to use more water, right? We know that there's development coming through residential. We know there's development coming through business. That's how that equation came to play. But right now, we're talking about heat. All right, so this is how far we actually forecasted it way further, but we want to be visible on the screen. Did I lose anybody so far? So far, so good. Great. JP, next slide. This is a dream for most cities. I'm pretty comfortable and confident saying most cities do not have this type of debt. If you notice, 2022, roughly, if I had to guess, about $325,000 worth of debt. This next year, it balloons a little bit. We jump up to about, rough math, 350, all right? And then after that, it takes a very steep drop. This is a dream in most cities. Okay, this is a dream to have this little debt. And you notice how it just kind of tails off, and soon we're going to be zero debt, which is great. But that also may be why the condition of our water lines are really rough. It could be. I'm not sure. I'm not saying it is, but this is where we need to address. Okay. All right. Next slide. So we need to make 5.2 roughly to break even. As you can see, the light blue that's been incorporated is a debt, and then that's where it tails off. Okay. So if you would have incorporated both of those together, that's what that would look like. And that light blue kind of just tails off all the way down, okay? Next slide, sir. So the difference is, right now, 2.5. You don't do anything about it, by 2027, our annual deficit would be 2.7, and in the long run, in 2032, it'd be 3.2. If we did nothing, this is how much each year the general fund would have to fund the utility side just to break even. Okay? This is what happens if we do nothing. It's gonna have to get paid through somewhere. That means you're gonna have to take it from the general fund side, which means arguably what nobody wants to see, tax rate goes up, anything else, it's one or the other. It's user fee based or general fund fee based. It's one or the other. We obviously have gotten clear direction from not only our residents, but from the state and everybody else that we don't want it to be from the property side. Fees like this should be user based. Enter as B2, right? JP, next slide. Remember this number, and this is our why, right? This is our why. This is where we are and why we're doing this, why we've gone through this exercise. This and the three or four things I told you. Quality, right? More importantly, our quality is the main thing that we're worried about. Then the pressure, and then the other, the safety of it, and make sure we reduce our water loss are secondary. But quality is always going to be number one. Next slide, sir. So the difference is we've got to get from here, where we are now, to here and keep it steady, right? This light gold-ish is where we need to be. We need to be here. Currently, we're here. So this is the difference. Thank you, JP. This is what we need to make up the difference from. Okay? Next slide, sir. This would be a one-year plan that we're going to go. Now, where do we fall in rank amongst all the other cities? These are the cities in our region. Okay? We're number 4, but we're very close to being between 1 and 2. Can't really compete with these because they are their own water district. Right? Texas City's got a pretty good base, so they can keep their rates down. We are the 4th lowest out of the 13 that are in our region. Okay? And if you're wondering, Hitchcock and Kima are almost twice what we are paying right now. Okay? Make sense? Hitchcock, which is very similar in population demographics and whatnot, is almost twice what we're charging.
Yeah.
Okay? Next slide.
Cesar, that mud district 12,
Yes,
it includes, Omega Bay.
correct.
Omega Bay does not pay our
That is correct.
fertilizer and water.
Yes, sir. Very good point. So now, let's talk about affordability, okay? Really important what we're talking about. Next slide, JP. What are we talking about? What's wrong with our water rates and what we're really worried about? Is it, I think my bill is too expensive and I don't like paying so much for water? Is that what the problem is? No, it's not. It's, is there a cost burden and will I struggle to pay my bill? This is emotion. This is fact, right? That's the difference between the two. Next slide, JP. The truth is the rationale, income is low, probably your consumption is low. Folks who are using that low consumption are probably folks that are on a fixed income or have a single income and probably at minimum wage. These are the folks that we're talking about, okay? And the correlation of that is those probably the same ones that are probably using the least amount. Because they're probably not too many people in their home, probably not home that much, and they're very conscientious about how much water they use. So this is the ones that may have the highest risk of affordability. So these are the ones that we're most concerned about when we consider any type of rate increase. Go ahead, next slide. Financial burden, okay? This is really, really important. Go ahead, JP.
Yep, you want me to take it from here for a few slides? Yeah, so there's a number of different metrics to measure affordability, and we're looking at three. This is a value judgment, so there's no standard about this, but there's a lot of folks who've written lots of stuff about this, including the EPA. And so the three metrics are an affordability burden, a financial burden, and something called the residential indicator. So the affordability burden is looking at how many hours do you have to work at minimum wage to pay for your water bill. And minimum wage in Texas is $7.25 an hour. And it's believed that a low burden is one where if you're working 6 hours or less in any one given month, if that's what it takes you to work to pay for your water bill, it's considered a low burden. If it's from 6 to 10 hours, then it's considered a mild burden. And if you're working 10 hours or more at minimum wage just to pay for your water bill, then that's considered a higher burden. So the next metric is called financial burden, and it's measured a different way. And in this case, what we're looking at is how much of your income does it take to pay for your water bill? And we're looking at what we call the lowest quintile income. So what that means, a quintile is just 1/5. So we're looking at the lowest 20% of the population, and this is coming from census data. So, when the census is done, everybody has to report what their household income is. And so we're looking at the lowest 20% of the population in the city of La Marque, and the average income in that group of people, so that's 1/5 of the population at the low end, their annual income is $12,000, okay, and some change. So if their water bill over the course of the year is less than 2% of that amount, then that's considered a low burden. And if it takes 2 to 4% of their total income, then that's considered mild. And then anything above 4 is beginning to look like a higher burden. Okay, and the EPA residential indicator is a similar way of looking at it, but instead of looking at the income of the lowest quintile, the lowest 20% of the population, we're looking at the median household income. And median household income just means the income of the people exactly in the middle of the pack. Okay, and in the city of La Marque, it's $50,000 is the annual household income plus some change. And in this case, the metrics work like this, where if you're spending less than 1%, which would be $504, if I kind of look at this number, $504 per year or less on your water bill, then that's considered a low burden. If you're between 1% and 2%, it's mild. And if you're 2% and above, then it's beginning to get into the higher burden. Okay, I don't know if I should be pausing here, Caesar, for questions or
No,
should
I think that's, are there any questions on this slide? Yes, Mr. Osteen.
I'd like to know, on that, like 12,154 and the 50,464. That's what the salary they make a year. Is that what you said? What you figuring this on?
Correct.
Okay. How much of that 50,000 do they actually take home on their check?
This is probably just consensus of what the census is, but yes.
Yeah, you can't figure what they gross is at the end of the year. You got to figure what their take home is to see if they can afford it.
Mhm.
That changes your low burden, your mild burden, and your higher burden. To be accurate, you need to know what they're taking home.
Right.
I just did it, Mr. Osteen. There are, and because I work in that area too, there, especially on affordability of housing, there is no acceptable resource available for us because everybody claims different dependents on when you fill out your work. So there's not, so for purposes of statistics, the MHI amount is what is the acceptable indicator, because there's nothing, we can't, everybody's varied, and we don't have that information. There's no other than, and it's confidential information that's maintained by the government on what you claim and things of that nature. So we just go by income basis.
You should be able to stick a number in there on an average, because you got your workers' comp. I'm not your workers' comp, but you got your Social Security coming out of that. That's a fixed rate that you could took off this. But what I'm saying is this is not accurate.
So let me respond to that. So you're absolutely correct.
So
Think of
can
this
you speak a little louder, because I'm hearing impaired.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're absolutely correct. Think of this as a flyover. This was not a deep dive into demographic analysis like the kind that you're suggesting, which there could be many, many other parameters that can get looked at. And that's a thing that's possible. At this point, we're just think of it as a flyover, just to get a feeling for what, where things may be in the community. Now, let me say also, this is looking at affordability from an entire community perspective. Every community will have individual households who struggle to pay their bills. And this analysis didn't go down to that level. And there are things that can be done, and you'll see that in a moment, to help individual households who are struggling. But this analysis is mostly meant to look at things from the 40,000-foot view, just to get some bearings on where things are in terms of cost.
And
I can live with that.
And the only way to get into further detail would be putting out a survey individually by home and whatnot, which again, can be done, but you're talking about time that right now we're kind of up against before we do something.
Yeah, I can go with it.
Next slide, JP.
Okay, so if we look at this, let me get my annotator out here. So across the bottom here, I've got consumption amount. So from the left, you're looking at if your bill for the month is for consumption of 1,000 gallons, and all the way over here on the right, it's looking at somebody who's consuming 10,000 gallons in a given month. And then over on the left-hand side, I just have the amount of the monthly bill. So you can imagine that based on the way the rates work, the more you consume, the higher your monthly bill will be. So there's going to be some line in here that's you'll see that in a moment. Before I get to the line, I just want to talk about the colors here, because we just talked about that there's, the value judgment on this metric. And again, remember, this is not a perfect science. This is just a value judgment. And so these green and yellow and red lines are set in behind on this chart, showing where it is that you get. So if you're, once you're working 6 hours in a month to pay for your water bill, you're right at the edge of that green line and you're beginning to enter into the yellow. And if you have to work 8 hours, you're in the yellow somewhere. And then if you get into being working 10 hours, then you start going out of the yellow and you're into the red, and then 12 hours and up, now you're in the red zone. Okay, so that's how this chart works. And if I now bring the line in, now we can see where the cost of water is with your current water rates. If you're consuming 1,000 gallons a month, you're paying, what is it again? $8.53, I think is the amount.
853, yes, 853.
53, okay. And as you consume more and more, you're paying more because you got an inclining block rate. But as you can see, based on this metric, you're still pretty much, until you get to be about a consumer of 10,000 gallons, that's when it starts to get out of the green. And I didn't go any further from 10,000, but you can imagine that as you consume 20, 30, 40,000, this black line will begin to enter up into the yellow and eventually the red. And the point of showing this is that, for those who we're trying to protect in terms of lower income and who's, fixed income, the assumption is that they should be consuming somewhere in this range, because if, big families will consume more. You might have families of 4 or 5 people with maybe one adult who's on a minimum wage. So that's the kind of households we're having in mind here. Not somebody who's got, 2 high earning, adults and with high paying jobs who are, doing things like washing their boats every day and so on. Those guys are going to be way out off to the right. And they're not the ones that we're concerned about when we're thinking about affordability.
Yes, sir. Hold on a second, JP. We got a question.
Another question. On affordability, there's another calculator. You can look at it differently by number of people in the household. So if I'm 1 versus 4, and that determines, I can still be a minimum wage, but I have 4 members in my family.
Sure.
And that impacts, is another way of looking at affordability.
Absolutely. And that's another portion of that is, again, usually, right, in the normal household, the correlation would be that it's in line with the number of people in the home. Now, obviously, if some of the number of people in the homes are either minors or don't have any income whatsoever, then obviously that fluctuates. But what we noted from the data that we've seen is that's not the great percentage of what's going on in Lamar.
Yeah, and you can, from our last census information.
Correct.
We have the breakdown of family sizes in Lamar from our population.
The situation would be to correlate those families with their income, and that's kind of where we, believe it or not, as those correlations occurred, usually the number that increases is usually proportionate with how many people are in the home, which then correlates to the consumption, and then it's just kind of an ongoing varying quotient. JP, next slide, please. I'm sorry, did that?
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide, JP.
Yeah, okay.
This is critical when we're looking at this, because it's really important what we're trying to do.
Before I go to the next slide, let me just add one more point here, which this is what we're talking about, is that any household that are struggling to pay their bills would likely be consuming in this range. If those households are consuming 20, 30,000 gallons a month, something's not right there. They shouldn't be consuming that much water if they're also struggling to pay their bills. So that's just an important way to look at this. And again, yes, you could do a deeper dive and look at individual households and correlate income with members of the household, and that's just a deeper analysis. All right, let me go on to the next one. So
this is a crucial slide. Please make sure if you have any questions on this slide, you really ask them now. Go ahead, JP.
Okay, so on the bottom axis, instead of the consumption, we've changed it now to what happens if we increase the rates. So over on the very far left, this means we're not increasing the rates at all. If we increased rates by 2%, we're at this point on the graph. If we increase rates by 5%, we're here, and so on, all the way to the increasing of rates by 100 or 200%. Now, there's 2 different graphs, two different traces on this chart. So the top, I've kind of messed up on my labels here. So the solid line is the 6,000 gallons and the dotted line below is the 1,000 gallons. So this is showing that the cost of 1,000 gallons of water today, which is $8.53, if we were to increase rates even all the way up, even doubling the rates like this, we're still in the green zone with that particular amount of consumption. And for a household who's consuming 6,000 gallons, we begin to start entering into the yellow zone at 100,000, at 100% increase. So again, this chart is giving an idea as to, as we increase rates, how much more pressure will be put on the cost burden for these two amounts of consumption.
So the next question is, well, why do you only show 1,000 to 6,000 gallons?
That's the average in the area.
It's more than just the average. It accounts for, out of the 5,733 residential accounts that we have, approximately 4,544, 79% used between zero, we put one, but technically between 0 and 6,000 gallons a month. So the good majority of them falls within this range, okay? All right, so this is why we've made this a focus, because that's also, in theory, consumption, as consumption stays within that realm, is probably where those that would need most help with the affordability would actually be. That's a very, very important thing. Are there any questions on this particular slide? Okay, because even if you notice, even as we said, and we're not even talking about 100% increase, all right, but even at 100%, even the range that does enter very mildly enters into that range. Okay, so I guess JP, next slide. So what
Yes,
happened?
go ahead.
So this is what the next steps are. We got to do two things. All right, an increase is imminent. It has to happen. I think we've looked at our numbers and we know that it has to occur. We're being conscientious to the affordability. We've been conscientious to our needs and try to do the bare minimum of what we need to do to still keep business moving forward. We need to explore assistance programs to help those individual households that are struggling to pay their bills. All right, right now we've got about, correct me if I'm wrong, about $150,000 total of people total right now for the last 4 years roughly that have been behind on their bills.
How many people?
$150,000.
No, how many people?
I would have to look at the data.
Oh, I thought that's what you
Right,
said.
$150,000,
$100,000, okay.
right? Of 10 million, technically, if you look at $2.5 million per year, past out of the 4 years, out of 10 million, it equates to 1% of the population that is behind, right? Over the course of 4 years, if you look at that equivalent. 1 to 1.5% of the population is what's struggling right now with this situation.
So to clarify, are you saying that the 1% of the population has at one time or other paid their bill late? Or are you saying that they've had a disconnect notice? That's a distinction there.
It is a combination of all. So that is late disconnection, that's during the COVID years, that's right now, if you look at what our balances are based off of that over the course of the last 4 years, that's what we're talking about. All right. I want everybody to know real facts and numbers of where they are. That's a debt that's been accumulated over the past 4 years. So we need to find assistance programs. Yes, we have not done a very good job to find assistance programs, and we're working with our council and with any form possible to find any type of ways that we can alleviate that debt for some of our folks. All right, that's something that we are doing, we're continuing to do for those that absolutely need it. All right. But the truth is we also need to recalibrate our actual structure to meet our growing needs and to, at the very minimum, break even. Okay? Because if we don't, we got to rely on general fund, which we can't at this point. Okay? All right, JP. All right, let's talk about capital improvements. We're going to pause and I want you to say, go back to what I said in the beginning, what is being asked of us. Okay? All right, there's been several ideas that have been tossed out by folks that we want to incorporate. Next slide, JP. In 2016, a study was done that said the main problem with our water lines and water leak study, everything that occurred, separated the city into 15 zones or 15 areas that had the most amount of fragile water lines. All right, and all the different streets were separated into priority 1 or priority 2 that needed to be addressed as far as the actual 2-inch line primarily. Next slide. I know that's
Is there
tough to
anywhere
see.
get that map? Just,
Yes, and I'm gonna actually, this presentation will be available as well.
okay.
Okay. This is a little bit of a blown up area because what we've done here is we've zoned in on the primary 8 areas that we need to really focus on first. These are of all the areas, these are the most critical. So this is essentially east of 45, for the most part of east of 45. Is the area that, for the most part, is the most fragile, which is also seen as you educated me, is more of the older side of Lamar. So it's obvious, right? It's probably the oldest infrastructure, so probably the most fragile. So the significance of these zones is, and going back to our capital improvement meeting we had the other day, we identified that the one that was the worst out of all of the primary zones was zone 7. So zone 7 is where we decided with that allocation. There was a resident who said, why don't you use any other opportunities that you have possible to address your capital improvements first? Well, we've done that.
So is the black line that's going up between 6 and 7, is that Cedar all the way up, or is that?
That's Cedar's kind of curve,
Okay,
and it's
yeah.
not necessarily Cedar. It's just kind of the way that it's split up. So don't. The only thing I can tell you is this is Texas City.
I know exactly
Right.
where Texas City is.
Yeah, and that's 45. That's probably the best divider to go by. But this is,
And that's the railroad track.
and that's the railroad track, correct? So we've identified zone 7 as the zone that is the worst, which is why we said the $4 million we were allocated from Mid-Mod, all right, which was the $4 million, would go towards addressing that zone, which incidentally is about 3.9 or so, is what we're thinking it may cost to repair. So the suggestion was made from those folks that have been here through all the things to see us put this kind of together through and through. That's the recommendation we're taking to council, to do that as the first zone, because that has the highest number of priority 1 streets. They have 14 priority 1 streets that have had leaks galore. Okay. Next one down from that, the second one is zone 8. So this is closer Main Street through 45 and so forth. Had the next set of worst areas. We are making a push to repair that when we put our allocation more than likely in January for council to review, to repair that with ARPA funds. So out of 15 zones in the city, we're gonna hopefully address 2 of those 15 already, just from funds, without even talking about what we're doing from our actual water rates, okay? And that's of importance to know, because that was one suggestion. Use what you got first, or go get some other dollars. Don't come to us first with a rate increase. That's what we've aligned already thus far that we're taking to council for approval. The 14th we're taking the Mid-Mod, and hopefully as early as January, we'll be taking the ARPA. So 2 out of those I guess 8 that you're talking about right now, that first cluster, are the ones we're gonna take to them first. All right.
And 7 and 8 are the highest number of leaks.
The highest number of priority 1 detected leaks through the 2016 water study that was done by previous leadership. So we're picking up what was done before. They said, here we go, this is what we got to get addressed, and we're picking the ball from there. Okay, so that leaves 1 through 6. But 1 through 6 also happens to be the zones that we talked about through our capital improvement that we also need to address, because they're also of importance, and they make the most sense to actually address. Okay, next slide, JP. So we talked about area 7 and 8 of what they're going to cost, or ballpark, and these are the years we're trying to do them in. Okay, we didn't have another TP for those because those haven't been approved yet, right? We're proposing these to council. But if you look at the TPs, what we call them TPs, if we were to address areas 1 through 3 in those years, to spread it out, right? We're not going to try to bite off more than we can chew. It would cost $5.4 million roughly. And then areas 4 through 6 are roughly $8 million. So we can spread this out. And while that's going on simultaneously, if the public supports are fixing our water lines, that's what it's going to take at this pace. We are ready to go as fast or as slow as the public and council gives us authority to do so. But one thing is not different. Okay, that one thing we can all agree on is the water line's got to get fixed, and it costs money. It's got to come from somewhere. So these are the things that we need to address. All right, so everybody understands this. This is addressing how we plan our plan of attack for those first 8 zones. This is what it's going to take. Here's what it costs. how we're doing. So we took the suggestion of one resident who was very vocal and said, hey, let's make sure that we use all the other dollars first. Here we go. Then come up with a plan to address the other most fragile areas next. That's the next thing we're doing.
So I listened to most of it while I was at a conference in San Antonio on Monday. Try and listen to, but so I heard something about swapping where the water meters are. So they're gonna still use the easements, the old easements in 6, 7, or are we going to actually? I mean,
It depends.
okay.
It depends on, I can't tell you generalize all of it. It would depend on where we're gonna do it. So in some places, yes, we might have to move the easement. Some, I'm not gonna lie to you, the connectivity is probably right on the street. We're trying to avoid breaking street or breaking ground
Right.
and have to do it over again. We need to make things right.
I agree. It seems like the new house is going up on Avenue B, the water's in the front instead of in an easement area.
Right.
So, but that's the developer
Correct.
putting those in, so I don't,
Yes,
I
sir.
just,
So that's why it depends.
Right.
Is the answer to that. Next slide, JP.
and I'm in area 6, so I just.
There you go. So, good. Thank you for sharing that. So our plan of attack on how we're gonna pay for these, the blue signifies the capital improvements we're trying to attack first. The pink would be borrowed funds. The yellow is what we're intending on using with our funds. Okay? It's pretty solid. I mean, if this is a plan, now we can move this. We can spread this out. We can do it later. We can be more aggressive. We can do it sooner. This is just a plan that is not, it's kind of in between, right? We want to get our water lines fixed, but we also know we can get it done faster. We're going to have to borrow more money sooner, right? Or we could spread it out equally. It is your, we're ready to do whatever you ask us to do. Okay, whatever is recommended. All right, next slide, JP. All right, now we get into rates, okay? So before we do that, I want to talk about, and Mr. Ross, I want to give you credit because actually I have your handout here. I just pulled it up. I didn't know I had it in this folder of some of the suggestions that you gave. And it's interesting because our rates came in a little bit below what you suggested. You remember your suggestion was to be at around 1 penny to 2 pennies per gallon, right? Closer to 1 penny if it was possible.
Right, if possible.
Well, if you look at, you have 1,000 gallon user, we're at 1.65 pennies. And as you correlate with the increase and as it goes, it drops slightly only because of consumption, because of the base rate. That's the only reason why it changes. We're at 1.1 penny, right at a penny, 9/10 of a penny, 9/10 of a penny. So we got as close as we could.
Right.
To address that, okay? So I want you to know to have that because you brought that suggestion and we did look deeply into it. We had another suggestion that was brought up, and very aggressive, and I'll be the first to tell you, when I first heard it, I said, there's no way it's gonna work. But it gave credence to what we were doing, and what we now have, I've called the all-in-one plan. This is where we talk about sanitation and sewer that we talked about earlier. The truth is, when people say, I don't want my water bill to go up, let's pause for a second. You don't get a water bill, you get a utility bill. This is a utility bill as part of an enterprise that we're trying to set up as an enterprise account. What is on your water bill? It's your water, it's your sewer, it's your sanitation, it's your CTTY, it's your parks fee, your parks and KLMC donation, it's your taxes, it's all of that. So it is a utility bill. So we cannot look at this, if we're gonna go with this all-in-one plan, we cannot look at this anymore as a water bill, even though that's what we call it. Oh, the water bill came. It's a utility bill.
Okay, now you said taxes, is that taxes on our water bills?
That is part of our sanitation agreement. It's just the way that they tack it on. And we are looking into any which way we can to get that way, find out what it is, but that's just part of the agreement the way it is. So in my opinion, I think it has to do with whatever part of the contract that was signed. And it has to be shown as a separate.
Thank you.
No problem. So the goal of the plan, when it originally was, that was said was, hey, anybody that uses from 1,000 to 3,000 gallons, what if we just gave them $100 bill? And they knew if it was $100, they knew what the bill was going to be. from 1 to 3,000 gallons, everybody would pay the same rate. All right, $100, that's what it is. Well, yes, but it also, in fairness to those that use less, that plan might not work. But how close did we come to the $100 plan, right? If you look at right here, what's circled here, for 3,000 gallons, before you put your $2 donation, we're within 22 cents of that plan.
Excuse me,
Sir,
you missed. I didn't catch up. My mind went off brain freeze for a moment. So you're no longer talking about a water bill, you're talking about our utility bill.
correct.
And so when you say these numbers now, that is all three items, all the items you mentioned,
And then some.
and then some, okay,
Yes, sir.
all right.
So the idea was to create one bill that covered everything. And the idea was keep it at $100 or less for 3,000 gallon users. We're within 22 cents. $100.22 before your $2 donation, should you choose to do that or not.
Okay, so everybody's on board here.
Mhm.
We're talking about so much for 1,000 gallons, so much for 2. But there's a minimum that you're gonna get charged. What is it, 3,000 for everybody, 3,000 gallons?
No, sir. That was what the plan that was proposed.
I thought that was going on now.
No, sir.
We had a
Right
minimum
now,
rate-
minimum is 1,000 gallons.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
It's 1,000 gallons right now, the way it is right now. It's $8.53 for 1,000 gallons. Right, so in fairness to that plan, the plan that we came up with, actually for 1,000 gallon users would be $80.46 before your $2 donation. But there's a lot going on here. I want you to understand, because we're going to have to break this slide down. There's roughly 5,033 residential accounts in the city of Marque right now. Yes, sir.
Is there any way to enlarge that?
Can you zoom this in a little bit, JB?
Let me see about that.
Joe, you need to get up here with me.
So
Well,
I agree 100%. We should have, I like the utility bill plan,
Mhm.
100%, just one thing. But if you're going to, and this is where you allow room to argue about what a base water rate is, take $11 out of that base water rate and charge it as a meter rate or delivery rate. And then your base fee is $5.50 for the first 1,000 gallons.
Actually, we did that. Your base rate that we're now proposing is $16.50 across the board.
Okay,
However, with the first $16.50, you get 1,000 free.
okay,
Then it goes incrementally as such. And I want you to know, this does not mean we're charging you this much per gallon.
right, that's,
It means that's what, here you're
It's
using
getting
this many,
tacked
so
on.
it gets tacked on.
okay,
So we did this because we needed to show what your bill is going to cost. And we're gonna show you a sample bill at the end.
gotcha.
Show you a sample bill of 1,000 gallon user so everybody can relate. But if you look at this correlation, scroll up a little bit. I want to show the bottom of it. I want to show the users. If you can, there you go. So 1,000 gallon users, there's 953 1,000 gallon users in the city. Okay, out of the 5,733. Look at the majority of the users are all between 1 and 5,000 gallons. I told you 80% of it. So the good chunk of it is being affected by this part of the actual graph. Very important we pay attention to that. Now let's talk about what's the difference. Well, right now, a 1,000 gallon users is getting their total bill is $57.48. Under this plan, it's going up to $82.46. Well, what am I getting for such an increase? Well, how much is that increase? It's $24.98. It's going up by $24.98. Well, what am I getting for $24.98? Right? And that's the question we're asking. What you're going to charge me, or what am I getting? Well, the truth is, it probably should have gone up more than that over the years to cover all the expenses. It's going to get us to a break-even point, so we're no longer at a almost $7,000 deficit per day. And more importantly, scroll up a little bit, JP. There's 3 things in color up here that are being added. All right. There's a capital improvement. Should you want to do this, this is not mandatory. This is for y'all to bring your discussions and your decisions to council for recommendation. Of that $24.98, $10.20 which would be your capital improvement fee at 6, a stormwater fee at 4, and a citizen portal of 20 cents. $10.20 of that are new things that you currently don't have. What are those things? Well, your citizen portal allows you to have on your phone or your computer a way for you to look at your bill, have consumption up to the day, correct me if I'm wrong, day by day if you want to see what your consumption is. So if you have a problem, a leak, anything else, that pays for us to have that service. For those that want it, it's there. But we have to spread the cost over everybody. Otherwise, it would be too skewed as to who has it, who doesn't. That purchases us 1,500 licenses. That's what that costs. The city would absorb through ARPA, should it be recommended, the install, the software, everything else, and that's an annual fee it costs us to, that's the breakdown of what it costs annually to have that in people's hands so you have it. Hey, I want to see what I'm doing. Just similar to those that follow their kilowatt usage at home and they want to know how much kilowatt usage they have. This is the same program, but for water. It allows you that chance. What it also does is it makes sure that you cover your deficit that we're in at 91 cents that I told you on the sanitation side, and it covers the $7,000 almost per day that we're in deficit for water. What it also does is it keeps your actual sewer system going strong. But that $6, I'll tell you since I've been here, here's most of the calls that I've gotten when it comes to fix something. It's been fix our water lines and deal with our drainage and our ditches. Those are number two, the one and two. Now the 6 and the 4 are interchangeable. You might tell me, you know what? Pay less attention to stormwater, more to water, and make that 7 and 3. Make that 8 and 2. Make it 9 and 1. Make it 10 and 0. Your decision is fine, and it'll be gauged into what aggression, the actual aggressiveness that we do. There was in the budget primarily there was a stormwater crew that we're trying to do to help clean out people's culverts and help with some of the deeper ditches and keep that straight, right? To keep that going. That was eliminated. We had some budget cuts, all right? We had a rollback went through, that came out. This is if the public chooses and if they support it, this is bringing that back into fruition, okay? The capital improvement, that is getting all those areas 1 through 6 done that we talked about. That's what the $6 does.
On the stormwater, so cleaning out ditches and cleaning out covers, does that mean hiring more employees, get more equipment?
Yes, sir. That's exactly what that
I
means.
think what you're saying too, following Mr. Osteen, that we really have our own, this enterprise fund, and that's what it's gonna go to,
Yes.
under, I think, Texas rules.
Mhm.
We have a true utility company as if it were a for-profit entity, selling electricity. So we're finally becoming business people in the operations of this city. And so we hire employees that are dedicated to those particular tasks, as opposed to right now, we've got 20% of the time they might be doing this, or
What it does is it puts a strain on staff to do a lot of different jobs, right? You have one day, and Venetia could speak to you because she just came from our public works department. On certain days, they would do, some street work, and then they got to go take care of whatever stuff is going on at the parks, and they got to go, repair some water lines. It's just kind of a smorgasbord is what happens. All right, that's what puts a strain on people. You don't know what you're doing the next day, and you get continuity, you get backed up on work orders. All right, we heard the other night we've repaired over 1,000 water leaks this year already. We heard right now that this week, at the start of this week, I get an update every week where we are with leaks. I got 69 leaks right now as we speak. Okay, in the city, reported. Those are the ones reported. We even know about the ones that are reported. Right? So again, I want you to understand something. That is not inclusive of the $25 here is not inclusive of the 6, is inclusive of the 6, the 4, and the 20 cents. Okay? Because those have been identified from public feedback as needs, not even wants. They are now becoming needs. We need to be better prepared in case a storm comes. We need to be better prepared with our water lines. We got to fix our water lines. We want more control of our water bill. Maybe if we're out of town, it's going out of whack. I was able to see someone's bill the other day that they never understood how to properly read their water bill. They had 1 month, they consumed 40,000 gallons, didn't know what happened. 40,000. 3 people in the home. Obviously something went wrong, right? So I want you to understand what I'm trying to say here. This will, you can set up alerts, and if you go over your total number, you're gonna get an alert on your phone that says, hey, you might want to check yourself. Maybe there's a leak. Maybe if you're on vacation and you're not there and you get an alert that you're consuming water at a higher rate when nobody's home. Hey, Miss Venetia, could you shut my water off? Something's going on. I won't talk. No one should be using my water. Right? That's what the portal would do. The storm water is simple. We got to get, knock on wood, nothing's happened yet. All right. But historically, there's been a number of storms in the area and we haven't been properly prepared for it. And one would argue we're less prepared now than we may have been in the past. We've got to do a better job of fixing and establishing a stormwater, not even fixing. We never had a stormwater division. It's never existed. It's attempted to happen now, but due to budget cuts, we had to take it away. So why did somebody want to do it? Because obviously it's a need. And most of the calls I get during the day are about water or about ditches. So it's simple. And I'm gonna tell you very honestly, I'll tell you exactly, and this is kind of moment of truth time. If this or something similar doesn't get approved, I'm gonna have a tough time answering the phone to folks when they tell me we have a problem. Okay, it's hard. It's hard for our staff to keep up. Okay,
But there's gonna come a point where they're gonna catch up, right?
one would hope.
Well, the 2025,
When we're done with that, but that's only half the zones, and that's only just our 2-inch water lines. That's not including all the other stuff that we need to do and all the other repairs we need to make.
I had to show for 2025, why?
Well, because I mean, we'll be here all night. I mean, we got about $50-something million of water line repairs that we got to do for the city.
So once this gets up, if it passes, it's gonna stay that way permanently, what you're telling me?
Not necessarily. Here's the beauty of it. Once we get caught up with the thing about capital improvement is not just water. Water is the priority now. We got 15 zones. I'm only talking about the first 8.
You just told me that, no, that have 225, we got other stuff that's gonna be coming up.
Well, there's still other stuff now.
Is it gonna be capital improvements then? If it is, then the $6 is gonna stay the same.
It is, again, Mr. Osteen, for anybody else that has the same question, either you or watching at home, we will go at the pace that's there. I only showed you a plan for areas 1 through 8. We got 15 zones, and that's only water. That's only 2-inch water lines. That's not including the fact that we want more pressure in our city, but we're gonna need to get a much bigger tower that has more gravity, so we can get a big one, so that the gravity can come down, so we can all get better pressure. That's not included in that, in zones 1 through 15. Your streets are not included in zones 1 through 15. Your parks are not included in zones 1 through 15. All right, your police station is not included. Those are things that are clear as day. We're told to us, those are not as prioritized as fixing our water. Do that first. If at one point somebody says take these away, fine, we'll take them away.
Okay.
I want us to walk away from things here. I want you to notice something.
That's all right. Let me see if I can understand this. You've confused me here at the end with this, take this away. Doesn't it make sense? And this is just how I'm looking at it. If this is the proposal that we move forward with over a 10-year period.
Until we reevaluate.
Until you look at it again, right?
Right.
And let some younger people as well deal with it. But the goal is, as we've learned from other successful cities, start the process, make the hard choices, and then you're going to be accumulating dollars over a 10-year period.
Great point.
You'll work with a fund.
And if I may, just to that point, we have a 5-year capital improvement plan that we bring into council for approval. We also within that have a 15-year outlook, that a lot of those projects are in line with those 15-year outlook. And how we pay for those, for example, if we go out and get a bond, a CO, whatever, borrow money, go ask, the gentleman that won all that money like on the Astros, all right, whoever, right? Those are not forgivable. We go after grants and state revolving funds, some of that may be forgivable, right? Because a portion of those zones 1 through 8 fall through a lower your moderate income areas. So those areas in particular, I highly suggest we do that sooner than later, because it makes most sense to do it now, because the likelihood of us getting that waived is much higher, or at least a portion of it, right? So, but we need to make that first pitch. But to your point, and to what Mayor Pro Tem Compion has said, it's very important that we look at the fact that this is in line with our capital improvement efforts. So to answer your question, it depends once we reevaluate. How much of the plan did we get accomplished? Did we accomplish all of it? Were we aggressive? Did we get some of those waived and we were able to do some other zones? Were we able to bring forward to maybe sprinkle in, hey, you know, we got one of the parks fixed because we got half of it waived? Were we able to get some of these streets waived, you know, done because we just did this one project? We know we need another probably $3 to $4 million to do another 10 streets. You know, what can we do then? We won't know until we get past the priority that was given to us, which is fix our water and fix it now. And to answer that question, it's dependent on when we evaluate again during that course of that 5-year capital improvement plan. Mr. Pennington.
This enterprise fund you're talking about,
Mhm.
that the money that we're going to pay into this, is it going to be strictly designated for utilities?
Yes.
Or can it be pulled out for something else?
No, sir. The idea when you set up a fund like this, similar to what your parks fee is now. I'd like to draw attention to your parks fee that's there now that was established via ordinance for $2. The fees that are there can only be used for parks. Right? For parks. That's that reason for it. In this case, your capital improvement fees will only be for capital improvement. And then your stormwater will only be for stormwater. The idea would be to set those accounts up accordingly.
But those capital improvements, is that strictly utility type improvements or can be any capital improvement?
It would be in line with your capital improvement plan. So happens that the first 5 to 15 years of it happens to be utility, because that's the number one concern that's been brought and prioritized through our capital improvement meetings thus far as a priority. Will that priority change? We'll see 5 years from now. We'll see how much of this we get accomplished. But to answer your question, that's it. And that can be changed at that time via ordinance. Right now, it would address utility fees
Well,
or utility projects, I'm sorry.
if we've got $53 million, $56 million worth of improvements on our water lines and utilities, then that money needs to be designated for that. When we get that money, I mean, when we get all that done and completed, then let's concentrate on some other capital improvements. But what's to say 2 years from now, that, oops, we need a new city hall. So we're going to take that money and start paying for a city hall.
I'm glad you said that. This capital improvement will be in line with whatever the capital improvement plan that is adopted and prioritized as such. So areas 1 through 3 and 5 through 6 that equated to about $13 million. What that says, if you put those areas as priority 1 and priority 2, the first $13 million in your capital improvement fund will go towards paying for those projects. That's 1. 2, if you set it up in the form of whether any form of debt, whether it's revolving debt, whatever, what have you, you would tie those dollars attributed to paying back that debt. And you tie it as such. That's why our capital improvement is so important. Having a plan that is adopted, sets forward and said, these are our marching orders. This is what we're going to do. Okay. It says, this is our plan. It's our battle cry. We're going to take care of these items first. Now, if in doing so, we apply for those $13 million of projects, areas 1 through 3, and then 4 through 6, and it gets done, then you tack, if within that realm, you tack whatever project number, in this case, 9 through 15 are, if that's the order it comes in. That's why the adoption of the capital improvement plan is so vital, because it tells you this is where these dollars would go. Whether they come from here, a rich uncle, state revolving funds, what have you. And that would be the intention. That's why prioritizing of those is so vital. And right now, clear as day, 1 through 15 is the top priority for any projects in the city.
So we got 5,722 ratepayers, is that right?
Scroll up, JB. I think it's 5733.
Well, I spent my figure too. So at $24.98, I figured $24, make it easy. You're looking at 1.647 million a year. a ratepayer will pay $288 a year.
I don't quite, I'm sorry, I'm not following.
I'm trying to see what what you're gonna be banking in a year. You take 5,723 times.
What numbers are you taking? I'm sorry.
Well,
What are you trying to figure
I'm
out?
taking $24.98.
That's for the 1,000, that's for the 1,000 gallon
I'm figuring the
usage.
minimum.
Right, it's 953.
Oh, it's 953.
953 people in that area. So 2498.
Well, what do you think we'd have, you can bank a year roughly if you put it all together and break it out? Can you figure the 927 on an average for everybody, or?
Well, no, it'd be whatever 2498 times 12 times 953.
Well, I didn't want to have to do every one of them to see what it was a year, but.
Well, I mean, we would have
It's
to.
gonna be substantial, right?
It's substantial enough to make up the $2.5 deficit, the $2.5 million deficit, plus bring in, and I'll tell you rough math, $400,000 a year towards capital improvement that we would use to pay back that debt, and roughly $200-something thousand to bring in for stormwater, to bring that project up, and roughly, don't quote me again, I'm just going by rough math, about 12,500 for your citizen portal.
And so by 2025, it should pretty much have the capital improvements paid for.
No,
No?
no, sir, because you have debt. Remember, it's $13 million, and even at 400,000
Okay.
It
I
was
thought it
13
was
million.
5 point something million.
for one zone. One
Okay,
zone,
one
1
zone,
through 3
one
was that,
zone.
but yeah, so then we make the decision, do we want to go out for debt? Or do we just do $400,000 worth of projects a year?
I see.
My question is, don't go out for debt, go out for funds that you would hopefully get waived.
That was one zone. Wow.
That was just one zone. The second zone was 8 million, if I remember correctly. So those two combined are 13 and change.
I
And that's just zones 1 through 6.
see now.
We're gonna cover 7 through 8 from another source, then we go to TAC 9 through 15.
Okay.
Okay, so I want to make sure that this slide makes sense, everybody, because the difference was for that zone. For the next group, it would be 2774, and the difference goes up because this is gonna sound awful, but because I'm up in this range, I have a whole lot of water usage in my home.
Right.
You penalize people that use more water, right? You get penalized because it's supposed to be about conservation, right? That's the whole thing about helping out the environment. So there's an incentive the less water you use. Also tied to that incentive goes back to affordability. We want to make it more affordable for those that use less water, in line with that study. Yes, sir.
Your point about conservation, isn't that a requirement to access the low interest loans from the state?
Not only is it a requirement for the loans, but it is a requirement to get some of these fees waived. And it is in line with best practices as what's done nationally. Usually you have folks who will pay an increasing rate, a ballooning rate based on what they actually use.
And since
Oh, wow.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Following up on Mr. Pennington's question, is it accurate to say that some of the capital improvement dollars, as you're focused on the repair of our water system
Yes, sir.
in our original settlement of Lamarck, would also be utilized for the repairs of the roads that are being undertaken or impacted by that?
That will have to be, to answer your question, that will be a decision made through our capital improvement plan. So for example, if the road is impacted now, and you have to dig in something up, then it would make sense to do so, but that would have to be in line with that. The same way the concept that people have asked us to focus on water, you would have to do a street breakdown as to cost to repair all these streets afterwards, if it's substantial damage that's caused by us breaking them apart. We can be, if it's just in the easement, doesn't affect the streets as much, then yes. But tied to that point, the long-term range plan of our stormwater plan is to make us a curb and gutter community. So we no longer have ditches. So we no longer need an actual stormwater feed. So we can somehow, hopefully within 20 years, get rid of ditches, right? We want to be a curb and gutter, or what people call a ditchless city. That would be the appeal that we would have. And some residents are already doing it. Some residents are already doing it on their own. Okay, but as a system, as a stormwater system, that's where you ultimately would like to be, because then you don't need to pay that much money to have everybody come out and blow out the culverts or dig out the ditches, because neighbors it'd be feasible for them to cut their grass on their own, because they're not having to go down a 4 or 3 foot ditch. before we move on, I want to make sure that this makes sense to everybody. Yes, sir.
Do these rates take into account the rising cost of water and the rising cost of sanitation?
It does to a certain extent. The idea would be that we would have to increase the rates, not your fixed things, not your capital improvement, not the tax, not the CTQI, not the support, not the stormwater, not the parks fee, but your rates for usage. So rates for sanitation, for sewer and water, those would have to increase modestly. And right now, we're looking at not as high as we were suggesting as 5%, but about 3 to 3.5% per year. Why? Because
How often do we redo contracts with sanitation and sewer and all that stuff?
sewer is done through what we do now. That's through our operations, what we do. Our sanitation is signed, I'd have to look at it. I think we're due up for a renewal right now in this next year, if I'm not mistaken, either 23 or 24, and it's in 3-year renewals. I do know that the totality of I want to say it's 24 because then it goes 24 to 27, and the finality of the original contract that was signed, the last extension, I believe, is exhausted in 2030. But we've already heard the rumblings from the sanitation industry that they may forego renewal and not agree for renewal to do new contract, because they originally, in their infinite wisdom, when they signed this back in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, they agreed to a 3-year increase because no one back in 2004 expected us to have 9 and 7-year inflation rates back to back. So right now they're losing.
Right.
So I'd be very surprised if they don't ask for a discontinuance of their current contract to renegotiate based on the fact that they can at time of renewal. We both have to agree on renewal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very likely that, I mean, would you renew if you were them at the current rate of 3%?
No, I
mean,
I just want to know because I'm good with this. I think that this is a great plan to go forward with, but we as a city also need to look at what our renewal rates are and when our contracts are due to redo these conversations again.
So the idea of our, like we just did with our user fees, our scheduled fees that we just did, the idea is to do them on every single even year. So we were trying to attack this last fiscal year and we couldn't get it done. And we're at the end of this calendar year now. The idea was to look at these every 2 years so you can be in line with any industry changes.
Okay.
I would love nothing more than come back and say, hey guys, we overprojected, we can bring our prices down. Not common, probably not likely with the way the economy is going, but we can allow that. Just like we can come back in 2 or 4 years and say, hey, well, the only thing I say is if you sign on debt based on some of these capital improvements, based on what we sign off for, those will probably have to stay based on what we're actually doing. But as far as your rates are concerned for sanitation, sewer, and water, then those can be negotiated at that time.
Right.
But to stay on par with what has been history for the past 18 years, I think, the last time I looked at projections, it's been average 3 to 5% kind of raise. And you're, for sure, when we just hit a 23% increase in water and what we're getting charged for water, and we're at 3% per year, at least through the end of 2024 on the sanitation side.
Okay.
And the equivalent is the same for sewer because it doesn't get any cheaper.
Right.
So, and that's why that falls in line with that. So I wanted to make sure this has, the only thing that's not addressed in this particular slide that everybody is asked questions about is what do we do about commercial? Another thing that was requested is, hey, commercial should pay more than residential. That's not fair. Well, we did that. JB, next slide, please. What we've done is we looked at how many accounts we had for commercial. Now, the line in red is sanitation. We left it at the consistent because some of our commercial accounts have regular trash cans. Some have more than one. Some have, and Venetia has headaches about this all the time when we have to do billing because some of them have different sizes. They get charged differently. All right, that's a headache. So that's why that is in red. We left it consistent for you to see because it's not correlated to this increase. Okay, it's not, it can't be because everybody gets charged differently. However, their increase is much more substantial on the usage rates. If you notice, out of 407 commercial accounts, a good majority of them fall in the 1,000 gallon usage rate, which is 159.
And I love being able to see what they do, but as a citizen, I'm more worried.
But the question was, that was asked of us,
Right.
Will theirs go up and will it go up at a higher rate than ours? And that's been addressed. Yes, it's about, it literally is about 1.5 to double almost what the increase would be for the standard resident. So in fairness to that, I wanted you guys to understand that. But I wanted to go over something that I did not mention. Yes.
For people that are not on our system for water, there will be some sort of schedule for them as well.
Absolutely. That's a great question because we have, going back to the residential account, Ms. Venetia, correct me if I'm wrong, we have residents who are not living in the city of the Marque, but the residential accounts that live in our ETJ that we charge for water.
Yeah.
All right, they get charged at a higher rate than residents do. So that was another question that was asked. Thank you. That makes sense.
But
In
the flip
relation
side,
to the
those
flip
that
side
are-
of it,
those that are using our sanitation and sewer system, but not our water, that's a different billing.
that's a different bill. So they would not be charged for the water in that sense. Okay. So I want to say something real quick. I forgot to mention something. JP, can you go back to the previous slide a split second? I want to show something down at the bottom. So we need to make a distinction that we need to say right now about our seniors and veterans, okay? Right now, our senior discount is how much?
$1.65, $1 off sewer and 65 cents off of trash.
They get $1.65 off their bill. Okay. What I'm proposing is either make them pay a reduced capital improvement and or stormwater fee, or if you want to, as a recommendation you can make, is eliminate altogether for them. Again, we're going to move at a pace equivalent to what our total is. If you were to do that, in this case, for this example that's on the screen, if you were to eliminate all of it, the increase for a senior in the 1,000 gallon range is only $14.78 on their entire utility bill. If you have them pay half, it's roughly, well, let's do the math on that. What is that? $19 and call it $20. It goes from a $25 increase and a $20 increase, which increases our senior discount that currently doesn't exist. I would move to either whatever portion of it, either half or not. But either way, we want to make sure that we are recognizing our seniors and our veterans in this case throughout the city. How many accounts does that equate to? I'll call it a walking computer. How many senior accounts do we have roughly?
703, around 700.
So you asked us to take into account, JP, go to the next slide. This is the last one or was one more? All right, so you asked us to make sure that we did the following. Go, hold it right here for that. You asked us to make sure we looked at all the different ideas that were brought to us. You asked us to look at addressing your capital improvement needs. We were asked to look into stormwater. You were asked to make sure we're not pledging money and losing money. You asked us to make sure we keep quality employees, we keep them here, and we keep the work getting done. You asked us to fix your leaks, increase your water quality, and increase safety in the city. This plan, as it's written, as it's showing right now, addresses most of those things. Is that as fast as we want? No, but we're also not, we're not in a position to go any faster right now. We have to be cognizant that we can't go higher. We don't want to break that affordability. Affordability is a big problem to us, and we want to bring something that we knew for a shadow of a doubt that would work if we all get behind it. Last slide, JP. This is a water bill. This is an actual resident's water bill who's using 1,000 gallons. Okay. This is what it would look like if it changed with the capital improvement, with the sewer, with the stormwater. It would go from 57.48 to 82.46. That's what a 1,000 gallon user's bill would look like. Now we can chop this up and do it for every single person, for every single one, and pull up sample bills and we can put them on. What does it look like? Here's a 1,000 gallon bill.
No, and I 100%. I mean, $85 for 1,000 gallons of water, plus that means I'm sending 1,000 gallons of water back somewhere 90% of the time, unless you water your yard or something like that.
Which you should have a separate meter for if you do.
Right.
And if you do, then you won't get charged.
Right. I mean, that all that right there makes 100% sense. And being able to have a citizens portal so that that 20 cents that's a no-brainer. I mean, I want to be able to look at my water meter on my phone when I'm at work, because I got an alert that something's going on. You know, come look at my cameras and go, oh, my neighbor's deciding to fill up
their pool with my water off of my bill. I wanted to tell you guys, this has been a labor of love. It's taken many, many, many hours. I have worked many hours with JP. JP's got to know, we spent a lot of hours looking at this from every angle. We've listened to what you've asked us to look into. We've looked at it. We've incorporated, how does this fit in line with our capital improvement? How does it fit in line with everything else that the city wants to get accomplished? What are the needs? What are the wants? Where do we want to see this going? This plan addresses, it checks off a lot of boxes. Does it check them all off? No, it doesn't. Does it get us brand new parks, brand new streets, and a brand new police station tomorrow? No, it doesn't. But it takes the first step to get there.
And honestly, and I probably won't speak for half of the citizens, but if you could raise my bill up to $90 for 1,000 gallons, but cut somebody's bill that only gets paid $12,000 a year, dear Lord, please do. You know, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Ross, that is very noble of you. And I will be very honest with you, that's not something we thought of. And maybe there can be a donation, a fund, or a separate line item that we could fill in, where somebody could make a donation to help others that may not be able to afford it. We call it a water bill affordability donation.
That would be
Kudos to
great.
you, because nobody thought of that. JP, I know you're listening. If we could do that, I think that would be something that we could quickly add to the presentation that we're going to make to council at that time, because that is the first step that needs to happen in order to help those that are going to need help. All right, obviously some do.
And if we can, if that's, it'd be $7.50, close enough. If that will help bring that 150 grand that's behind up to date, and somebody can keep their water and their baby can get some formula that night. I mean, come on, that's simple, that's easy, every day of the week.
Very noble. And what I will suggest is we'll put that as a donation option for folks to have.
I would appreciate that.
You got a real problem with mistrusting government with your citizens in Marque right now.
I know. I know. I
You
know.
start talking about fund for this and fund for that, you know.
This is why, Mr. Olson, we're willing to move at the pace. Look, everything in those shaded colors, JP, go back a couple of slides real quick. Everything in those shaded colors that we talked about on that table, all right? Those are extras, right? Those are because additional needs have been asked of us. Want to repair water lines? Here's a chance. Want to take care of stormwater? Here's a chance. If you tell me eliminate stormwater, we'll eliminate it. At the end of the day, we're trying to address as many needs as we can at one time. The truth is, and everything else that's for it, is we need to break even. What we need to make sure that we walk out of here understanding is our rates to cover our bills. I mean, we cannot walk out of here at differences.
I'm gonna go back in some long history when I first got on council.
Mhm.
And we always told the council, the mayor, over the 15 years I was on council, we always told the people, hey, bear with us, when we get some business in here, we're gonna start giving y'all some relief. But there's never been no relief given the whole 15 years I was on council. And I'm part of that, don't get me wrong. Something always come up and we couldn't do it. Yeah, that leaves a bad taste in our older citizens' mouth.
I think a bad part of that wasn't thought of is twofold. And I wasn't here, I can't tell you, but I'm only trying to go back in time and see if I was a mosquito on the wall. There's two things that as society we probably didn't think about at that time. Is one was a rapid rate of inflation that had never happened before. The foreclosure market, everything that's happened in the past years, and all these things, and lack of supplies and supply and demand and shipping issues that are going on nationwide. Nobody could have planned for them. Nobody could have thought of it in a million years, COVID, right? I don't think, I'll never forget the day that I heard, oh, we're closing down, like, yeah, right, like for how long, for a couple of hours? I'll never forget where I was sitting when I got, it changed everybody's lives. Things that have happened have changed people's lives. That's one thing. And another thing is people didn't probably think then that things would keep breaking.
Right.
They probably looked at, well, here's the problem now. They don't understand that there's other problems that happen. We'll go right now, we'll go fix 50 feet of pipe underground. We'll fix the same line, we'll get it fixed, and within a month, 2 to 3 months, same line, couple hundred feet down the line is also now broken. Why? Because we're not fixing the line, we're not fixing the problem, we're fixing a piece of it.
Well, let me, when you present this, let me give you an idea I think might help. You know, man, I might have to pay $24.98 more a month. That's crazy. But if you break it down, well, hey, it's only $288 a year. That sounds better.
See, I thought the other way around.
Yeah,
I thought the lower amount was a little bit easier. I don't know, how does everybody else, I mean, and I'm okay. I mean, we can put a slide that shows $24.98 times 12 and look what, I mean, that's.
Yeah, it's $288 a year.
I am all ears. I don't know if everybody would equate to that. Cause now, see, $208, I could probably buy a plane ticket somewhere. You know, I could probably, what are you taking away for 288 if you look at it that way? So in a sense, 208 might make an extra Christmas gift for somebody or a family member or I don't, it depends, right? You know, $280 might buy you some electric bill, a couple of tires. I mean, it depends on how you look at it, right?
Yeah, kind of, but the way I looked at it was I had to pay $24, almost $25 extra a month. And then when I got to putting a pencil out, well, $288 a year ain't that bad.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it.
Again, yeah, you're right. I mean, JP, I know you're listening.
It's just
to
it's a thought,
No, I'm, again,
because I mean,
I'm okay.
I'm good with this,
okay.
but I'm you know, trying to give you some
Yeah.
suggestions.
No, and
how to sell it.
I just, it's funny because we probably had a slide like that on there. There's a lot of things that we added and we looked at it like, no, we don't want it to be perceived. We don't want to confuse. We want to keep it simple, so yeah, that's
Everybody's
easy.
opinion, that'd be a good
No.
gauge tonight. You can ask everybody what they
No,
think.
Mr. Jones, I think that's a great, just like the suggestion was made about the donation. That's an easy fix. That's just one, right, in the same page, we put $24.98, take that number, divide it, multiply it by 12, and that's what that equivalent is. Easy.
Sally, how do you feel about all this?
Knowing JP, he's probably doing that already as we're talking.
Let me ask Sally how she feels about this. She's a senior like myself, fixed
I'm
income.
having a hard time with all of the added fees, especially the capital improvement plan being tacked onto a utility bill.
Right, I'm sorry.
I just think there are other ways that we can pay for these capital improvements.
There are. I just wanted to make sure we did not make it a burden
We're
on
gonna
the
give a
taxes.
break to seniors. Yes, I
Yeah,
agree with that.
I
But what is the percentage of our population that are seniors? 703
out of those 5,733 accounts. So you're talking about one, was that 1/8? It would take 1/8. So, but to the question, if it gives you any comfort, so you know, the only thing we're bringing to council now is everything on the actual bill, not the capital improvement and stormwater, because those have to be separate ordinances. So those can't come to them now for review. What's being heard Monday night for first reading is this, because those have to be separate ordinances. And those have to come as separate items altogether. We would have to, just like when the parks fee was put in, I guess, what, two years ago, right? The 2 years ago that was put in, anybody parks fee? Two or 3 years ago, it had to be its own separate ordinance, its own separate fee.
So what you're presenting to have those subtracted from
Yes.
this amount.
From this amount initially, until those were passed.
And the portal, the citizens portal,
That would be up to the discretion of what we want, because that's tied to utility rates now. That's tied to what we're doing now. So that would be a decision that we would bring to council.
we're paying for that now.
No, we would want to introduce that now because we're ready to hopefully get that started as early as January. Because regardless of it, folks are gonna, what am I getting for the increase? At the very least, you should offer is the board, in my opinion.
Wasn't that part of the capital improvement plan?
It was one of the items that are in there.
Okay, so we're just going forward with that.
That was by the suggestion of everybody, and that's what we're bringing through the ARPA plan, because a large portion of it is being, the first $30,000 to enroll and get it going, we're pushing to put it through the ARPA plan. Through those funds. That would be the initial, the uploading of the software. an implementation, I should call.
Then be paying for what?
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
This, the citizens portal fee of 20 cents
Yes, ma'am.
would be paying for updates and.
It would be the annual fee of the software. So the software usually has an implementation fee
That's
and then an
right.
annual fee.
Sure.
And that would be for a certain number of licenses. I believe it's 1,500 licenses.
Yeah.
For that amount. And if
Okay.
usage increases, we purchase more.
We have-
But obviously, we know that the rate of it would be equivalent to, if we need more licenses, well, it's gonna be covered by more people by 2017.
No, I agree with that.
At that point, if we get to the splitting of atoms where we're getting 20 cents per person for the licenses, then at that point, you know, we're just have to just
I
fund it.
agree with that.
Yeah, I think at the end of it, we need to make sure that everybody understood that we're taking this opportunity to show you it's no longer a water bill, right? We're setting up an enterprise fund, right? To address these are your enterprise items. It's your parks, it's your CIP, it's everything else that's on. I mean, we could call this fixing water lines. We could call it whatever, I mean, that's relevant. We could call it stormwater instead of stormwater being what it is, clean my ditches, you know, or whatever, you know, blow out my culvert. I mean, the name of it is equivalent to the fact that stormwater is more the industry standard, CIP is more the industry standard. But that's at that point.
You know, it's like what Jake was talking about earlier, what it's gonna be spent on. It needs to be spent on what it's gonna go, what it's telling the citizens it's gonna go to.
My opinion on this, if this were to be favorably received, is we don't implement an ordinance for this fee until we adopt a capital improvement plan.
Most definitely.
Because
And that way, you talk about public trust, here's our plan, and here's how we're gonna go address it.
So I think that this, it should be called capital improvement on this. They're not gonna be watchdogs around here forever. It's gonna come down to the historical knowledge of those of us that are around to say this is it, and the documentation that we draft with regard to this.
JP, I know you're still on. I'm sure you're making notes of this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, the connection's been glitching out the last 5 minutes, Caesar, so I'm only getting like little bits and pieces.
So a couple suggestions that we have. One suggestion was on the slide that we have $24.98 increase where we showed the bill, to multiply that number by 12 and to show a total of what that would equate to yearly for a 1,000 gallon user. Suggestion number 2 was to add a line where we call it a affordability donation, equivalent to whatever that would be, whatever that number would be, equivalent to that, the difference from the 82.46 and the actual $9, whatever that difference is, or the 90. So it's like $7.50, I believe, was suggested. And it's merely a donation, so it's simply by what you have. Item number 3 that was just suggested was to change capital improvements, CIP, to utility capital improvements, or a UCIP.
Okay, I got those. Yeah, we can talk about those next week.
Mr. Pennington?
I don't have a problem with this. Selling it's gonna be a problem. But as far as the capital improvements fund, changing that, there needs to be a way to restrict that for just utilities for either a set amount of time or a set amount of money. Because councils change. And 2, 3, 4 years from now, council may come back and say, well, you know, that capital improvements plan, we're gonna go back and change that. Water's, we fixed some stuff, but water's not important anymore. We're gonna go to streets, or we're gonna go to something else over here. And you're asking the citizens to put money into this to fix water problems. And they need, somehow or another, that needs to be restricted to that until we get a certain amount of money or a certain period of time completed.
Can that be done in the writing of the ordinance?
Absolutely. You can follow the line with whatever specific capital improvement projects you ask, and also with the delivery method that you use to obtain it. So it could be, you know what, we're not gonna go out for any debt. We're gonna get this much money this year, and that's how much money we're gonna spend next year towards capital improvements. The problem with that is understand you're gonna go at tomorrow's dollars or next year's dollars when we do them, so it may change. But in my recommendation, something that involves either grants where you can use that towards a match, or a state revolving fund where hopefully some of them can be dismissed or forgiven, is the word, where some of those can be forgiven, that would be the optimal use. And then at that time, you can then make the decision then. But I also suggest that that's an ordinance that's looked at every couple of years.
Well, yeah, and keeping in mind, David, a new council could change an ordinance,
Yeah. that's
but
what I
they
know.
might get opposition from the citizens, and that might sway them to leave it like it is. Because, you know, we start talking about people's money, they can get serious about these meetings.
And obviously, I understand the parks fee in the past was something of a, topic that was hard to swallow. So I do know that it's not going to be easy, which is why I'm asking, what we're losing money on is everything in Hawaii that's up there, the base water, that's what we need to address first. All this other, I mean, the fact that we're talking about capital improvements and stormwater is exciting to me because you know what? It means that we agree that we got to fix it. We agree we have a deficit, we got to move forward. But we're talking about extra. I mean, that's kind of the icing on the cake. So I'm okay with that aspect of it. And it's your will. We can drop that, we can increase it, we can move it all, the truth is folks have said, this is what you want us to do, here's a course of action to do it. And whatever method we use to get there, whether it's language in the ordinance, setting up a separate account fund for that, calling it only utilities, and then later down the line, when we start attacking the streets, create a new street one, whatever our choice decisions are to do that, that would be based on that. So to that point, I think that would be invaluable. What is that, JP? Sorry. So I think that's important for everybody. So JP, can you go to the last slide one more time? I wanted us to walk away with tonight. It's almost 8 o'clock. I want to get you guys out of here. I wanted to walk away with the fact that concerns were brought to us, different options were brought to us, different ideas, different plans, different methods. All right. We no longer are worried about where we stand on that 4 through 13 or the 1 through 13. We care more about what we're trying to get done, which is address our issues. Okay. And this plan allows us in very many different ways to do that. Hopefully it does allow us a chance to give folks more than $1 super discount. This plan, when we incorporate the capital improvement support, would allow us to do that. But that is our decision collectively to do. So you guys understand what happens now? Yes.
On this, so when I discussed this methodology with you, I said, my hope was that we're not going to have to consider individually at some point our sanitation fees and our sewer fees, because those items tend to split communities. They don't build strong communities. Is this accomplishing that?
In my opinion, by creating an all-in-one plan that incorporates that moves all three of them together with a substantial increase. So it's 3.5% is what we're suggesting. Collectively, it allows us to never get, hopefully, assuming that inflation doesn't get out of whack and things don't go crazy, to hopefully not get in this predicament again, right? The hope, to answer your question, is I can't answer that. It'll be based on how it's received. But to me, my opinion is yes, because it produces it together. And now we collectively say, in next time it's time to okay, look, our rate's going 3.5%. Just like every September 1, October 1, I know that our rate's going up. Last year, we were 9 cents in the hole per every single time somebody picked up your trash per month per resident. This year, starting October 1, it went up to 91 cents. So we knew, it was the very first next bill. First bill in October we got from our sanitation contract was new rate. You know, we knew that the deficit became larger at that time. So as long as we could do that, and we can do it across the board to address the inflation that we know, the increase that we know is coming, and it falls in line with the growth that we projected, right? Because the growth that was projected will help us in that sense to make sure we stay in line with that graph, then yes, it does accomplish that. It does accomplish it collectively. Again, it also allows us the time frame to prepare for the unexpected a little bit better than we have in the past.
Well, as you know, I share the concerns, history, I'll be 60 years here, and things are promised on the one hand, and they're changed. So there's going to be some very strict legal language in this that's going to probably, in my part, have criminal penalties if this is not honored.
Sure.
Okay.
And again, I want to make sure, that we I understand what you're saying. What you're talking about is this stuff in yellow.
Yeah.
Because we're really talking about two separate things here. We're talking about the fact that we need to stop being in a deficit, increase our rates to where they need to be, which is all this stuff that's up here in the white, right? That's what we're affecting the change on, which are reflected on here. The stuff in the yellow is kind of the icing on the cake.
And I don't want it to be, because we've had this done by past city managers as well, who on their own initiative reallocate funding that has been, and that's what I'm talking about. I want to avoid, and I want specific language. This is what our ordinance says, and follow it.
Well,
Be
I don't.
warned. And so that's one thing. Second, I will also supplement, make this suggestion, and this has to do with credibility, is that I would suggest that we take this opportunity to form an enterprise citizens advisory group that would have reports presented once every quarter to give updates on are we following this, and have that as part of this particular ordinance as well.
You weren't supposed to steal my thunder.
Well,
My plan was, once that capital improvement committee that we have asked for to be created, and once we pass our capital improvement plan, the idea was to carry that forward to create that same group or a similar group to do the same for these utility, this is utility enterprise fund. But the intention is that, one, and two, just to the other point too, Mayor Pro Tem, with all due respect to anybody who's held this position before me, I love my family near and dear, and I want to go home to them every night. So I'm not going to do anything to put me in harm's way.
I'm not suggesting
But what I mean by that is, I can't speak for those that aren't here. I'm speaking to people odd numbers done. I do know that the parks fee, when it was initiated, was something that was very tough and very contentious. I can understand why. I don't know what was attempted or not, but I don't make any moves or any suggestions or anything without first vetting them, including our staff, including our leadership, to make sure that what we're doing together as well.
You're the only city manager that has these transparent meetings for the public. Means a lot. It raises your credibility with me. But like Joe said, we've had some city managers that were shady after the fact. Well, we just went through it, but that's no reflection on you, because this is your first city manager job. So it's not no reflection on you whatsoever.
Mr. Osteen, this might be my first rodeo in this chair, but it's not my first time dealing with people. And I'm a very big believer in not the golden rule, but the platinum rule. See, the golden rule has taught us since we were little to treat others how they wish to be treated, right? Treat others how you wish to be treated. Because the truth is you might not like to get treated the way I do. So I've learned that you need to bring the platinum rule and treat people how they wish to be treated. That's one. And two, you talked about, you talked about others that may have had certain transgressions. And again, I can't speak to because I don't know, I wasn't here.
Right.
but I can tell you, I wake up every single day and I come to this job like it's my first day. Every day I work to earn the trust and the actual respectability of not only our staff, my first immediate bosses, but my 19,000 bosses that are out there. And that's the oath that I took. That's the oath that I spoke of during my interview process. That's the oath that I've held from day one. And I'm willing, that's the one I'm gonna take into the day that I'm no longer here. And I know that I've got a lot to prove because of that situation, because of the fact of which directions that have been here before and everything else, but this is the only way that I know how to be. And I will call all of you on that. If I ever change, call me out. Call me out, because this is the only person I've been for these 43 years that I've been here, you know, able to live and breathe, and I haven't changed since. That's why I've always been the odd one out, because I've always had to prove myself at every stop.
Well, you're in a town that will call you out.
Oh, I know. But guess what?
Like, welcome.
Hey, almost 8 months in, there's been plenty of things that have been said, but you know what? We're still here, and I'm still smiling, doing it, trying to move this forward. So with your support, with your efforts, with your feedback, we'll continue to do that, not only through this, but through all the projects that we face. At no time does anybody want to come up here and sit here and expose themselves to telling people, hey, we need to raise your rates. But I've done it up here with a smile and with, you know, I'll take the blows, and I'll take it. Negativity comes to me. Anything you want to say about praise, that goes to the staff. But you want to, I will be your punching bag. I will keep this phone on me until about 2, 3:30, or whenever I fall asleep each morning. All right.
Well,
But
in all fairness, the heat's not gonna be on you. It's gonna be on the 5 stand set up there.
Yeah.
That's where the heat's gonna be.
we're still on camera, but I will keep this PG. We know which way the stuff rolls.
Yeah.
It rolls downhill, so I know where it comes. I just want you to know that it stops with me.
I think Joe can attest to that, can't you, Joe?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Any other questions from the public? Anything else before we close?
I'm gonna, just one last time, I understand how the water rate, your base fee, how it's all figured together. And looking at other cities, how they have a meter rate, we really can't do that because we don't know how. But I'm gonna one more time suggest you take that $11 out of your base fee. Because when you call it the base fee, everything is expected to go up from there, not back down. So take that $11 out, call it water delivery fee or meter rate, like they call it. I think this is Hitchcock, and then do another per gallon for 0 to 2,000 gallons. Each one.
So what you're suggesting there, hey, JP, I don't know if you can hear, instead of a base rate that we're suggesting, the idea would be to call it a base water instead of there, to call it more of a utility delivery.
Yes,
Okay.
and then the one below, even at the 1,000, have a $5.50 charge, and then it's on top of that is the next one. You still get the $11, and then it's $10.50 or $11.
Well, if that's the case, Mr. Ross, to do that, then we would change where it says base water, right? To utility delivery fee, right?
Yes,
And then technically, in fairness of that, since it's $5.50, then that would drop to $2.25.
sure.
In that box, that's what you're saying?
Yes. Whatever that first rate you want to have for the
Okay.
first 1,000 gallons goes into that first box.
Okay.
And then that way you can see the progression going up, and somebody can't say, you said the base fee is this, why at 2,000 gallons is it less?
Okay. I don't think that's a problem at all.
I mean, that makes it so transparent that they can't be like me and say, no, you're charging me more per gallon.
That's fair. Any other questions, comments, concerns? I'd like to thank everybody that has provided feedback, taking the time to be here. That's your most valuable asset to me. Not your dollars, not your cents, but your opinions towards this. I want to take a moment and thank everybody, President Mayor Pro Tem who's here, members of different boards, former council members, staff, Kyle who got us going, and JP, thank you for your efforts. I think we know what we got to do between now and Monday. For those residents who may have not been here, your neighbors who may have questions, we'll have one more of these at 4 o'clock on Monday. And where we're going to present an edited version of this with your suggestions you've given tonight to council for them to decide first reading of it at the 6 o'clock meeting. Okay, so any questions, you might, you know what, I have another question, I have a suggestion. Preferably tell me over the weekend or Monday morning so we can include it in the presentation. If you can, so we can include it as part of the presentation, what I mean. And then obviously more than welcome to voice it, and or if you don't mind, if you are in support or anything, please, if you can make it to the 4 o'clock, or if you'd like to send something like we read in the record, so we can voice their opinion, because I will let them know, for those that were in attendance, that something can be said.
Is there any way you could put something like this in the paper where people can get, a lot of people don't look at the website. I'm disappointed with the turnout tonight.
You know, it's funny you say that, because I thought it'd be a bigger turnout tonight.
Well, nobody know, I didn't really know about it to the last minute.
I know a lot of people said that they weren't going to make it tonight, but it'll be here on Monday. Because we had a similar meeting this week, was that this week,
Yeah,
Monday?
you had a meeting Monday, you had two meetings Monday.
And I tell you, we had like
It was full.
half full, more
Yeah.
than half full, so that's with you, I'm surprised. I thought we'd have more, but then again, Thursday before the holiday weekend,
Yeah.
maybe, I've already had some people told me they'll be here on Monday, they couldn't make it tonight, but they'll be here on Monday. So out of respect to them, it's very good possibility that they'll be here then.
So they got a section there that's free where it says what the council members are for the different cities.
Mhm.
You could have put something like that in there.
Okay.
And mine still can. You know what I'm talking about, that
Yeah,
section?
we'll see if it's.
It shows all the cities when they're counting, and it shows
If
this
not-
council meeting on the
If
14th.
not, Kyle, can you make sure we get another CTY and more social media website?
And it gives a time like 6 o'clock for the council meeting, but need to put in there at 4 o'clock so people know. But that's a free thing.
Got it. I don't know if we'll be able to do it for Monday, but only like
Yeah.
by, I think 5 o'clock the Thursday before, but we will attempt to do so.
I'd like to get a good turnout so people can hear it.
I hope so. Now, another thing we're gonna do about this is, we're gonna put this same recording that was today, Kyle, can we come on, are you able to post it? For folks to review it?
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, so folks, if you tell anybody, to go to the YouTube channel, they'll be able to listen to it.
Okay.
Recording will be available through our website on Zoom if they can't get to YouTube for whatever reason. And we'll also send out information for folks to come, and hopefully we can rely on you to tell your folks as well. And then we'll take it from there. Mayor Pro Tem, good night. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, JP. Thank you so much. We'll talk a lot, I'm sure, between now and Monday. Thank you.
Sounds good. All right, have a good night. Thanks, Cesar.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you.